Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. Today, I have joining me again the fabulous Kaylee Blair, brain coach extraordinaire. Kaylee has been with me on multiple episodes thus far, so you should check out episode 20 for her personal brain injury story and episode 28 for our interview with neuro-optometrist Devin Duvall, an excellent one there too, and episode 43 for our discussion of tips for managing the mental and emotional parts of concussion recovery. So Kaylee and I go way back, many, many moons, and she is awesome and will provide some really good information for us today. I'm excited for this conversation. Today, we are going to take a bit of a deeper dive into what we like to call the Gage System. And this is one of the most helpful tools for people dealing with chronic illness or chronic fatigue, and is one that we mentioned back in episode 43. But I wanted to dedicate an entire episode to this strategy because it can be so very helpful for people dealing with concussion symptoms. And I thought it would be good to do a little bit of a deeper dive. So I'm also going to throw out here at the beginning of this discussion that this tool can be extremely useful, and we're going to give you some great ideas of how to implement it. But if you want extra personalized help with creating your own Gage system, we would be more than happy to help walk you through it. So please reach out if you want some one-on-one assistance with this. So Kaylee, welcome back. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm happy to be here.
Hey, so let's have you start out by sharing with us an overview of what the Gage system is, why we need it, all the good stuff.
You got it. So Gage system, oftentimes I'll mention Gage system and people go, what the heck is that? Obviously, if you're familiar with cars, you have your fuel gauge, which determines how full or empty the tank is. As human beings, we also, simply put, have a Gage system. That typically lets us know how much energy we can expend and not. And depending on, sometimes brain injury or not, people are aware of that expenditure or they aren't. So when it comes to concussion recovery or even in regular daily life, a Gage system can be a really useful tool to gain awareness of your personal Gage system, physical system, and checking in to know how you're doing and how to regulate your nervous system. So how we do that, there's a lot of various tools to do it, but essentially you are defining and bringing awareness to certain levels of well-being. And then you bring that up with your partner, your support, your family, loved ones, friends, and with yourself. And you start gauging each day, tracking how well you're doing. And then from there, you start to recognize trends. What's helping, what isn't, what's your goal that you want to get to, and how to get there. It'll start to kind of help things shift and change as they need to. So it's a pretty beautiful process.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that's a good, as you're talking about it, I'm like, yeah, the main point of this is awareness, because then we can make decisions based on that awareness, kind of like you're saying, that shows us in the car how much gas we've got. That awareness can be very, very helpful. In fact, quite vital sometimes. So yeah, this is good. So how did you come across this, and how did it help you in your brain injury recovery?
Yeah, I had the most amazing speech cognitive therapist after my second injury that I had kind of had introduced to me in different ways, but it didn't click until I was working with this guy, and he was awesome. And he essentially helped me start to become aware of, hey, you need to put brain injury first. Brain injury recovery comes before resting, if that even makes sense. Like it just comes before everything. And so you're going to rest to recover. You're going to eat to help your brain. You're going to sleep to help your brain. It just kind of helped me because I would get distracted because my executive functioning was clear out there. And so I would be like, oh, I got to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then all of a sudden I would have extreme symptoms again. And I was like, I keep going backwards. What's going on here? And he goes, you need to take the time to let your nervous system start to heal and regulate. And I was like, oh. And so he kind of taught me his system. And then from there, I took it from there and built it to what it is now.
Excellent. And so we kind of talked about this a little bit, but are there other benefits of creating and paying attention to a Gage system?
Yes, so many. So the Gage system, as I mentioned before, building that awareness is key because once you've built an awareness of what symptoms you get when, for instance, with brain injuries, oftentimes you'll find that you have a key symptom. So sometimes that symptom is like for me with the first injury, it was emotions. If my emotions were completely out of whack or not in agreement with where I was physically, just completely incongruent, that would tell me, oh, I got it down to, I have about 30 minutes before I'm completely incapacitated with a migraine. And that took time because it took me recognizing that that was my key symptom. Oftentimes, sometimes it can be ringing in the ears. Sometimes it can be a head pain. Sometimes it's your vision, just depending on the person. There tends to be a key symptom that helps with this Gage system. So knowing that helps you start to recognize what helps you recover, what kind of brain breaks you need to help make a difference in healing your nervous system. And then I should say your central nervous system, ANS, all of it. And then from there, when you start to recognize what helps, then you start to become more proactive in recovery as well, rather than reactive to symptoms. Instead of questioning why all the time you keep falling backwards, you start to answer with, oh, okay. It gives you a map of functionality. That's another way I like to describe it, because then it also helps you know, oh, well, I can't quite read for 30 minutes yet, but I can read for about 10. And so it'll help you start to gauge and understand what things you can and can't do to move forward in recovery.
Awesome. And I think as part of that, again, that increased awareness, that ability to make informed decisions about how you spend your time, that allows you to increase your capacity because you are taking the breaks when you need them ahead of time so that you have more capability to do the things that you want to be doing. And yeah, just helps with that recovery. And I think you kind of mentioned this before too, but I think it's worth pointing out is that it gives a language to use with loved ones, the people around you who are just as baffled as you are about when and why you're all of a sudden not able to do something, whereas you could do it 10 minutes ago or yesterday or whatever. Like it gives people common language and ability to communicate and kind of understand each other better, which I think can be very key and helpful for everybody, all parties involved. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. I know there are so many different tools or like types of systems that people like to use to gauge their systems or their symptoms and their activity capacity. So why don't you share with us some of the ones that you've found to be most effective for people or for yourself? And
Sure. I did want to mention really quick, sometimes when loved ones are trying to help, the survivor tends to depend on them rather than seeking to build awareness themselves of how they're doing. So I just wanted to also recognize that doing this Gage system will help bring a little bit more of independence and power back to the survivor and relieve some of the pressure on the loved ones. I just wanted to add that in there before we moved on.
Yeah, thank you. So explain a little bit more about that. Like, what do you mean by it relieves some of the pressure on the loved ones?
So, for instance, a lot of times I see it in the dynamics between partners, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. If, say, the girlfriend has the injury and the boyfriend is hyper aware of them and starting to recognize when they need to go take breaks, but the person that is the survivor, the girlfriend, isn't quite aware of that and is just dealing with the intense pain. And so she waits for him to say, hey, you need to take a break, rather than her rebuilding herself and knowing when to take a break. So then he tends to feel a lot more pressure to try to help her. And it just feels like a lot of pressure because they are relying on you. And it's not necessarily a bad dynamic. In fact, it's awesome when it's needed. but eventually being able to start to be aware of both boyfriend and girlfriend, knowing when they need to take a break, because caretaking for somebody also requires having that gauge system for yourself to regulate.
Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So yeah, let's talk about the different ways people like to use to measure their symptoms and where they're at.
Yeah. So there's so many, and I'm sure there's more than I have even come across for sure. But one that I like that I think is kind of fun is, if you've ever read The Ghost in My Brain, he talks about battery life and A, B, and C batteries. And C is like the reserve of reserves, and each has 3 levels within them. That was kind of how he decided to do it. So he would wake up and go, okay, I'm at C, but I'm a full C. So that's nice. But I need to take it easy this morning. I need to do some things that are going to continue to charge my batteries until I've got his goal. I don't know what his goals were or were not, but I'd imagine, say you set a goal to get to B and always stay around B, the top of B. So there's the battery, there's spoon theory, where you start off with 5, 6, 7 spoons, and then each task you do, you take away however many spoons it needs to, and that lets you know how many.
The spoons represent energy, like an amount of energy. Mm-hmm. So each task takes a certain number of spoons or can, revitalize. So sorry, just making sure we're clarifying that.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Yes. So it represents those energy levels and what each task does to impact that energy level. There's the number scale. So, 0 to 10, how are you feeling? What's your energy levels at? Symptoms, things like that. My favorite, last but not least, is the color system. It can be used in a wide capacity in a lot of different clinics. They use it for different things. It could be simply put as, stop, yield, go. We tend to use it in our program as, how I prefer it is by creating definitions per color. And I actually have 4 colors instead of 3, because sometimes going from yellow to red just seems a little extreme. So I have like a red, orange, yellow, green. And we define those according to where you're at in your recovery. One pro tip is to recognize that the definitions are meant to be fluid. They're meant to change as you recover, as you heal. And green doesn't mean you're fully recovered. Green is whatever you're at the capacity to reach. What does green level look like for you now? So, yeah.
Green is you're good to go, just to whatever degree that means for you at that point. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So... Yep, it does.
And red is typically like, this is what it looks like when I'm totally done. Like I can't.
Yeah.
When that trigger symptom, that like main symptom that kind of tells you that you're about to shut down, like full stop. What does that look like?
Yeah, red is considered full shutdown mode, and whatever symptoms go with that, all the way down to green, which green can still mean you have a slight headache and fatigue, but you're functioning better than you were in red, orange, and yellow. And then that green will shift to no headache or even less headache, less vision problems as you continue to heal and progress, because you want it to be attainable right now.
Yes. Love that. Yeah. Another way of doing this that I learned from Leah Davidson with the nervous system resilience class that I took from her. She calls it your landscapes, and just deciding, within the nervous system states that you could be in like a hyper aroused state, or your like zone of safety and resilience, or a hypo aroused state. Like, what does it look like? And it can be a very good practice to go again in depth with it and be like, how do I feel? Like, what am I feeling in my body? How am I reacting? What physically is happening? What emotionally is happening? How am I holding my body, my posture, my face? Like, you can get very specific. And again, recognizing how you're responding, how your body is responding in these different states can be a really good clue, because sometimes our bodies are responding before our awareness is happening. So yeah, that increased just defining it and being really explicit about it and understanding it can be very helpful in being intentional. So when people set up their gauge system, what is helpful? I love that you mentioned that it can kind of adjust and change over time as to what the different definitions of each of them means. But what do you tell them to like focus on first? Like, how do they want to proceed once they've got it set up? How's it actually helpful?
So once they've got their definitions put together, and they have shared it with their loved ones, I always recommend printing it out, writing it out, putting it on your fridge, putting it in a couple different places where you are aware, in the bathroom, by the mirror, in your phone, just various different places. And then the people that you live with or you talk to all the time, you also tell them that, because then it can become kind of a secret code language, essentially. So instead of when your loved one says, okay, how are you feeling? You go, I'm in orange. I got to take a break. You could even just say, I'm in orange. And they go, okay, yeah, go do what you got to do. So you start to implement, and you start with, typically the goal is first, what color am I in? So starting to build the awareness muscle of what zone you're in. And then from there, you go into, okay, what percentage have I been in each zone this week or this day? Whatever you feel the most comfortable with putting together. And then from there, you go and look at, how can I stay out of the red zone? What do I need to do to stay out of the red zone? Oftentimes in a lot of different clinics, modalities, therapies, they talk about, and they might use slightly different language, but essentially the concept is you're trying to find the sweet spot, both for learning, for healing, and progression. And when your nervous system is in the red zone, orange zone all the time, or most of the time, or even 10% of the time that it's there, you're not actually healing. So to get to the place where you can continue to see the recovery results, the goal would be then to get out of the red zone first.
Thank you. I think that is really important. And I think also at the beginning, like you said, kind of be aware of, as you set it up and as you're first thinking in this way, just get an awareness of where you're at, like a baseline. Okay, how much, like you kind of said, what percentage of the time am I in red? And that way you can kind of, again, gauge how the improvement that happens as you're being more intentional about trying to stay out of the red. And I think we've had, clients who, as we've done this, and then we check in with them later, okay, what percentage of the time would you say you were in the red this week? And then they realize, they hadn't even realized that they were still seeing how far they had to go. And so they didn't even realize, oh, actually, I have made some really good improvements in that. So it can be an encouraging thing as you, again, increase that awareness and intentionality of how you approach it. And something else that you said that I really like, I know in the OT world, we use this phrase, the just right challenge, a lot. And again, it's not new or anything, but it's this idea that we want to be pushing ourselves. We don't want to be laying on the couch all day forever, but we need to figure out that balance of pushing without pushing too far and then causing extra problems. But yeah, that zone of comfort versus zone of discomfort, and that zone of growth that's kind of in between there. So yeah, it's a balance. It's figuring it out. And this is a really great tool to use in that process of figuring it out. So I have ideas too, but why don't you tell us how people can use this awareness to know when to actually take a rest break? So it sounds like generally we're wanting to try to stay out of the red as much as possible. Like when you realize you're in orange, if you've gotten into orange, that's a clear signal, yes, take a break now. Are there other tips that you use in general around that?
Yeah, you kind of, how I've liked to do it is by steps. Obviously, each person's going to be unique and different, so it will look and feel maybe slightly different from what I share here. But typically I say, okay, let's try to get 100% out of red. And then after that, then I say, okay, how often are we in orange and yellow and green now? And then we evaluate, okay, we've noticed these things have changed. Some with one client, I had her start writing out the things that were helpful as she was working to get out of red and the tasks that were not helpful. And then we could slowly kind of know what tasks to start to explore in again when you are mostly in orange. And typically, if you're in yellow to green, you're still fairly in that, you're almost in that resilient zone that you've talked about. You're almost there. And so obviously we want to be in green 100% of the time, as much as possible. But after, it's going to be a process to get there. So it's kind of a step ladder. How do I stay out of red? How do I stay out of orange? How do I keep it to yellow, green? And as you do that, you'll start to notice things shift and change in recovery.
Awesome. Would you mind sharing with us what it looked like for you as you were figuring this out for yourself and how that kind of changed the process?
It quieted the noise for me. It forced me to stop doing anything that wasn't helping. So it was kind of dramatic at first. And so for the first 3 days, I was like feeling pretty frustrated because it felt like I was doing nothing. But I had to remind myself, mindset wise, I was actually doing exactly what my nervous system needed. And because at that point, things were so far that I could barely exercise without losing gross and fine motor skill. And I had a neck injury involved with it as well. So there was some complex pieces to that puzzle. And so I wasn't able to do, like a lot of people listening probably know, wasn't able to do a full PAR cycle, prepare, activate, recover. I could barely get in activate and barely get in quality recover. Oftentimes I was just in this state of kind of frenzied brain. You can't control it. Thoughts are going a million miles an hour, extreme pain, things like that. Movements weren't quite my own at that point either. So it quieted the noise and forced me to figure out what did feel relieving and kind of sit in my body. Oftentimes our response to pain is to avoid until it gets to a point where we have to do something. And this made me have to do something. So it also helped to have somebody who I was accountable to. So having John, he was amazing, to talk things through with, be like, this is what happened. But after day 3, I noticed day 1, day 2, things starting to shift and change. And then about day 3 or 4, all of a sudden it was like a bombardment of a ton of emotions. And I was like, what is wrong with me? What's going on? And that's one thing to be aware of is when your nervous system is starting to regulate, starting to calm down, when some of the check engine lights are turning off, then your system says, all of these other things we haven't processed yet, I'm going to start opening the floodgates a little bit. And then it just feels like, so you start to feel worse for a little while. And yes, so it's not uncommon. In fact, it's a good thing that it happens, because that says we're on the right track. And then you start to work from there and baby step it from there. That's why I really recommend doing this Gage system with me and you, with somebody who has awareness of, doesn't have to be us, but somebody who has awareness of this stuff to help kind of guide you through it, because it is a process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. I appreciate you bringing that up and those other points that came out from that. That's good for people to be aware of. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. And as just another general guideline for knowing when to push or when to take a break, I'm going to just throw this out there. If we're going on if you're looking at your symptoms as like a 10-point scale, then it's helpful to push yourself to maybe not more than 2 to 3 point increase on that 10-point scale. So again, as you're trying to find what is okay to push, how far to push, that might be a good indicator. Like if you're in the moment and you notice, okay, symptoms are starting to happen and they're increasing up to 2 to 3 points, that's a really good indicator to stop and take a break as well. So throwing that out there, because I think that is one of the hardest things people face with this, is knowing when, knowing how much to push, because a lot of people just want to get back to life, do the things and push through, make it happen. That's how they've operated their whole lives up to this point, is you push but this way, it's not worth it to push all the way through in most cases when you've got a head injury. So yes, I think we already talked about this, but is there any other points that we want to put out there about how it can be beneficial for family members in the support system? Like how can they engage in this process, or what they can do to help the person that they love manage their symptoms?
Yes, I think I want to just address mindset with this system for both the support and the person implementing, to let go of any expectations with it and change it with intent. So kind of like I'm intending to do this, because what that does is helps relieve some of the pressure. And when your nervous system is already stressed out beyond its capacity, letting go of that expectation and replacing with some sort of just, I'm intending to do this. I'm hoping that this is going to do well for me, and I'm going to move forward with this with that intent that it is going to help me. Then that will relieve some of that pressure. as well as understanding that I always hated it when people reminded me of this, but just that it's an exploration. There's no exact blueprint for everyone. It is different. Everybody's functional map looks and feels different. There might be similarities to them. Maybe me and you have the same ear ringing, right? Or something to that effect. There will be similarities, and you're not alone in dealing with it. But as far as how it presents and how it works for you, it's going to shift and change depending upon you. It's kind of the beauty of it. So yeah, kind of just wanted to mention it's about getting curious instead of being judgmental. So if you were 50% of the day good at recognizing what color or battery level or whatever, scale 0 to 10, whatever you were at, then great. Take that. Use that information. That's beautiful. And let go and move on to the next one. So kind of just being able to let go and move forward. No judgment. Just get curious.
Yes. Okay. That's really important. Thank you for bringing that up. I do think that curiosity and openness. And again, like you were saying, if we are not judging where we're at, if it's like, okay, I'm using this as a tool to discover, a discovery tool, not a beat myself up tool or something that I think if we put a lot of pressure on ourselves or feel like it has to be this, these aren't grades. We're not shooting for, I mean, we would ideally love to be in green all the time, but we're not there, which is why we're doing this. And honestly, nobody is there all the time, no matter what they're dealing, whether they've had a brain injury or not. But I think, that's a very important point. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. So a little bit
Could I mention one thing?
Yeah.
With the support system, allow your loved one that's the survivor to explore. Sometimes it's hard. Well, most of the times it's extremely hard to watch your loved one experience pain or struggle. And that takes a toll both on you and them because they see your struggle. So working to regulate your own system will in turn help them. Me and Bethany talk about this a lot, like having the nervous system ourselves regulated well enough so that even when we work with somebody over the phone or we're talking to somebody in person, we can help their nervous system start to regulate just by being near them. Because as Bethany mentioned earlier, your body is already detecting before you're aware, saying, am I safe? Am I okay? And so if you're around somebody who's like, yeah, I'm good, then you go, oh, well, then I'm good too. So it's kind of like on the opposite side, right? We know that common term of if mom's unhappy, the whole family's unhappy.
Ain't nobody happy.
Yeah. Ain't nobody happy. I just wanted to bring that up as a tip for people who are supporting somebody going through something like this.
Yes.
Just allow
that energy, like that co-regulation is what it's called, right? Like when the place that we're at can have a positive or negative, but we're shooting for positive impact on those around us. So yeah, as the caregiver, loved one, taking care of yourself is vital and key so that then you can be there the way that you want to. So, and yeah, I think kind of along those lines, just again, a lot of compassion, self-compassion, compassion for each other and loving yourself through it all, because if we're resisting where we're at, then that's going to persist. Resistance is futile. Please don't do that. Just use this as an awareness thing. Okay, this is where I'm at. And then let's learn from that and move forward. But there's no judgment, or it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It's an individualized process, which can be so good and so annoying, because I think people want it would be so nice if there was like a cut and dry, like do this and this and this, and then you'll be better. But that's really not how it works. So,
you know, what's funny about that? Like psychologically, if you think of like when we're kids thrive off of structure, even if they won't tell you that because they don't know that and they fight it a lot. But once you've got the structure down, then they are thriving. Most kids. So when we have brain injuries, that typically sets us back some. And sometimes it brings up some of our old survival skills, including when we were kids and needed that structure. We kind of crave that structure because everything is chaos and out of our control. So you're trying to relearn that executive function by having a structure. So it's not a uncommon theme to want a structure. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything else that we should discuss about Gage systems, or anything else that you want people to know about this topic?
Just that it's a process. I think we've covered everything fairly well. Simplicity is your friend in regards to this as well. So simplicity, being curious, and letting go. I think those things are crucial to creating a Gage system for yourself and allowing the process. Oftentimes, we've already talked a lot about that, but yeah, that's what I'll say.
Yeah. I think too, a point that might be important to make is a lot of times, and a lot of the people that we work with, I kind of alluded to this a little bit, but very like type A personalities, like the more I throw myself into this, the better I'm going to perform. And we can tend to lean on the side of like becoming obsessive about things and like perfectionistic. And I think that has probably served you well in a lot of ways throughout your life, but that's not how it works with a brain injury. It's not doing this and you want to find a balance. You want to be aware. It is very important to be aware, but you don't want to be hyper aware. So we're always trying to figure out, there's always balance to be found in all of these tools and all of the things. But I think it's important to just throw that out there as well. We do want to be aware. We want to know where we're at with compassion and love and make decisions based on that. But we don't want to get, hyper focused on it and so like driven by it that we forget to live our lives and enjoy the things that are happening in our lives at the moment. We want to be grounded too. So for what's that's worth. Again, this is why it's helpful to have somebody to chat about these things with. And it's helpful to have a coach or somebody that you can bounce ideas off of and help make sure that you're not leaning too far in either direction. So on that line, how can people find us, Haley, if they want individualized help creating and implementing their own Gage systems, if they wanted that from us?
Yeah, for sure. They can go to postconcussionsuccess.com, where we do a free consult with people, and we can discuss kind of what your goals are and what program can specifically help you with your Gage system there. Yeah, that's probably the best way. Or they can email us at postconcussionsuccess@OSE.
Info@postconcussionsuccess.com.
Info. Thank you. Info@postconcussionsuccess.com.
Yes. And just to be like clear on this, because I know it might be confusing for people, Kaylee and I each have our own private coaching practices, and then we have a combined one where people get to work with both of us. And so I know you're probably going to be hearing, I'm the one that has the podcast going. And so I have my like intro and outro that tells you to contact me, but Haley's amazing. And I love the combination of us together. So if you want to work with both of us, that is 100% an option. And so please reach out, let us know if you would like to get help from both Haley and me, and you can do it through the stuff on the intro and outro, or you can just go to postconcussionsuccess.com or email us at info@postconcussionsuccess.com. So, all right. Anything else, Kaylee, that you want to let the world know before we end this?
The world. No, nothing's come to mind. I think this was great. Thanks so much, Bethany.
Yeah, thank you. I hope this will be really helpful for people. This is a key tool that can make a big difference. So thanks for discussing it with us today, Kaylee.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.